Good afternoon. Again, my name is Karen Sistrunk. I'm the Deputy People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a very special treat. OPC is so very pleased to have one of our nation's most inspirational and dynamic voices in the fight for environmental justice and clean energy. He is a minister, a community and environmental activist, and one of the most influential people in hip-hop political life. He has truly been a pioneer in mobilizing the younger generation to make their voices heard on important issues such as climate change, the criminal justice system, and human rights. He is the founder and CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus and a distinguished alum of the University of the District of Columbia and the Howard University School of Divinity. He is also a very proud resident of the District of Columbia. Of course, I am talking about none other than the Reverend Lennox Yearwood. Reverend Yearwood is widely recognized for his work on environmental issues, right? Not yet, Reverend Yearwood. Rolling Stone named Reverend Yearwood one of our country's new green heroes, and the Huffington Post named him one of the top 10 change makers in the green movement. Reverend Yearwood was also named as one of the 100 most powerful African Americans by Ebony magazine in 2010. He has been featured in CNN, MSNBC, BET, and MTV, just to name a few. He has mobilized young people and underserved communities across the country on such issues as Hurricane Katrina, the Keystone XL pipeline, increasing access to renewable energy, and President Obama's Clean Power Plan. Just like OPC, Reverend Yearwood is firmly dedicated to informing and empowering people to take control of their own energy future. We are so appreciative that Reverend Yearwood is here today. Please, everyone, join me in giving a warm welcome to Reverend Yearwood.
Give it up for Tony over here helping me out. Give it up right here. Give it up for Tony. Be assisting me here with the video. Let me just say this. I am super excited to be here and to be invited by OPC. You're right. Your mission is parallel to my mission. Simply to empower the people. And it's an honor to be here. I am a proud, and I will say I'm a phenomenal, because I'm here at my alma mater, the University of the District of Columbia. Yes, give it up. And I say that because I'm going to lead in with this part of the story, and then I want to show you a little bit of a feature film that's going to be coming out in 2016. Jason Pollock, who's the protege for Michael Moore, is directing a film that will be coming out in theaters that you'll see a little snippet of it, and it's for me, it's amazing to be a feature of this film. It's amazing to be a feature of some of you might have saw the Discovery Channel film, Hip Hop Rev, which was fun, but this is actually fun because, again, it goes more into the work around climate change. But let me say this, I know there are different people here. My job, so you know my remarks, that I'm not a politician. I am a preacher, right? I'm a preacher. My job is to be a prophet, to say to stop what could happen in the future. To say, okay, if you do this now, you'll stop that from happening down the line. That's my job. So I say that because part of my job is that I am an advocate for the next generation. I'm an advocate for us transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy. I know some of you work in that sector, and that's fine. And we can have a great conversation. Thank God for Dr. Harris and folks at Energy, because there is a transition that we can talk about. But my job, just so you understand, is to fight for particularly poor people. My job is to fight for them. Now, I'll give you an example of that, what I mean. When I was a student here at UDC, I did two things. I played basketball for the Firebirds, or tried to play basketball. I was on the team. When you say that, I was the guy who was in the warm-up. I was a good clap guy. Then the other had to run the court, and I'd go there and have my seat. That was my job. Seat warmer, really. That's what I was. So that was that. I was also the STA president. So many men know at that time we fought because the school was going through some financial problems. And so students rose up and we did some things. Fast forward a few years, when I graduated, the school liked what I did as a student and then hired me to be the director of student life and activities. Literally went from being a student to director of student life. Now, for a young cat, that's a great job. I mean, here I am working. It's a government job. It's, you know what I'm saying? I'm young. I went from being carrying the backpack to carrying the suitcase in 1 week. Good look. But at that time, this is part of the story, they wanted to do two things. Anthony Williams had become mayor. Dr. Beverly Anderson was the provost. And they wanted to move the university from this location to southeast. And they said it would be nice, but they gave no plans. They just said, we're just going to move you. But what are the plans? Well, we'll have plans later. If you know you have plans later, that means no plans now, it means no plans later. They also said in those plans that we would get rid of the David Clark School of Law. That would be gone. We don't need that. Students can go to other schools. So many of us put our bodies on the line. We marched up there to Connecticut Avenue. We stopped traffic out front, got honked at, yelled at, people threw things at us. We went through this process. But because of policy, because UDC and policy is so important, we stopped it because there's one little thing called UDC is a land grant institution that the mayor had forgotten about. And because of that, we can hang our hats to keep this school where it is. Now, part of that discussion, I was so out front, I was on the news, I was, all that kind of stuff, and I was up there leading the charge. Two things was kind of told, that the mayor was embarrassed so that me and Dr. Anderson would have to go. We would lose our jobs, which then had me go to seminary to become a minister. But God has a plan. Because when I come back here now to UDC, almost 20 years later, the school is still here. Amen. And last I checked, we are sitting in the law school. Amen. So what I'm saying to you is that the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy might cause some of you to have to put your bodies, your careers on the line. Now, I understand that when that happened in '98, my son, River, was only 6 months old. So not only was I a recent graduate with a nice job, but I was a young father. But I recognize that all those kids who have come through UDC and all the people who have maybe come to this law school who would never know that happened, it doesn't matter that they not, now, but what's more important, they are able to come here. What I'm telling you is this, and I'm going to show this film, and then we're going to just close with some next steps, is that the reality, if we don't transition from fossil fuels to clean energy quickly, then the next generation, those who will come around on 100 years from now, on 2115, none of us will probably be here in 2115. Unless you find some really good drugs, and Doc, if you do, hit me on Twitter. But more than likely, we won't be here. You're right, we won't be here in 2115. But the work of our transition will. That's why for this generation, regarding clean energy, this is their lunch counter moment for the 21st century. Because they're not just dealing with equality, which is part of the issue, but now we're dealing with existence. Now, I know that many say, well, you're going to have higher utility bills, and you're going to have higher this, and, it won't impact on the grid. They told me all the same things. If you go out there in the streets with UDC, you're going to mess up your career. You're going to, you're smart. You came out of UDC with a summa cum laude. You graduated. You have all this potential. You're working. Why would you throw it away? Because it does not mean anything. Because we are fighting for the next generation.
All right.
Now, I know some of y'all, I know some of y'all are going to have to go home, have some hard decisions, or maybe not. Just Reverend ain't saying nothing. That's cool. That's whatever. I'm just trying to tell you this, though, is that the reality is this. This is real. Is that the story of climate justice is not new. The story of our children and our parents getting asthma and cancer and bronchitis because of coal-fired power plants in their community is not new. The story of mamas having heat stroke and grandmamas getting heat stroke is not new. This is not a new story. And what is new is that we can transition. We can transition. But it's this thing called policy. Now, when I left here, I recognized one thing I learned from UDC was this. Either you shape policy, or policy will shape you. And either you are at the table, or you are on the menu. There is no in between. And so when it comes to affirm a true justice-related energy policy, we can't create that. But it will take the people's power. So this film here was done, we went around, this kind of gives a little entree into what's happening. We created an album called Home, Heal Our Mother Earth. I was very fortunate. Right now, one of our artists is on the mall, Common, hooked up with Common, and Malik Youssef. Malik Youssef is the super producer for Kanye West. He's won 5 Grammys, been nominated 15 times for Grammys. I got him, I wanted him to do a climate album, and so to kind of make this movement that we're all in together relatable to another generation. And so I was fortunate because he had a little break, and so Kanye was doing this thing called getting married to Kim Kardashian. So thank God Kim Kardashian, a little time to slip in there and say, Malik, can you help me out with this album? He did. And so Malik Youssef came on board to create this album, which you'll see the beginning part of this is that album is done. It came out last year, at the end of last year. It's phenomenal. You can get it on iTunes, iTunes/home. But most importantly, it's a movement now that's building because Common's involved. Malik Youssef, Neo, actors like Mark Ruffalo, Leo DiCaprio. So we have all these artists, Elle Varner, Crystal Waters. The list is going on. They're now because we framed it that they can have a voice. They want to save our planet. So this is what that is, and they followed us around doing this. So what you'll see is a little bit of that, and then you also see just a little bit of history. Because sometimes people think that people of color are not in this movement. You see a little bit of the history of the climate justice movement. in this film. So we'll see that, and then I'll just come up with some next steps. So hit the lights. Let's hit the lights first, I guess. I don't know if y'all can see it over there. I guess it's on your side, to the side room, to the right. Lights. Lights.
They started, then I get the light.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna grab the light.
We worked hard to write these songs, make people feel something. So this song is called Trouble in the Water. There's trouble in the water. There's trouble in the water, children. There's trouble in the water. There's trouble in the water, children.
Jordan, you want to play with them vocals a little bit from, just see the part where I say 911, this is a 911, no ambulance, fresh and salt water out of balance. The challenge and balance is good together, so make sure we get that tonation.
It's a 911 with no ambulance. Fresh and salt water way out of balance. Please stop with this goofy ice water challenge. The ocean, she ain't your trash can. Living in a gas lamp. Fire water flows straight out of my faucet. Now fire water flows straight out of the faucet. We raping the planet. Mother Earth is the caustic. So, what the freak is cracking? With all this freaking fracking, they gon' freak around and release the freaking Kraken.
Any input you got, boy, put in there. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm about to. We're part creature. Gorilla Monsoon tracks for Yeezus to talk on, but the seeds are too diseased for Jesus to walk on. Heal our Mother Earth.
I'm just excited for the world to be able to feel this passion and feel this healing, you know. That's what it is.
Because she's way too big for us to draw chalk on. Thank you. My name is Willie Kusep. We're called Caucus. We're here.
This is a story about a topic called climate justice. Some might also call it environmental justice. But at the end of the day, this is really a story about justice. You see, in the climate change conversation right now, the issue of justice takes a back seat.
On our broadcast tonight, Melting Away, there is new and dramatic evidence of what's happening to our world, melting ice and rising seas at record levels, and tonight we'll look at the impact already being felt.
We constantly hear news about wildlife dying, polar bears and ice caps.
You ought to stop fishing in the ice like that. The size of that hole is causing climate change. Really? How do you figure that out? Well, you've been fishing like that for as long as I can remember, and climate change is happening, so that must be causing it. Haven't you seen all the pollution in the air?
Unfortunately, we never really hear about how climate change is killing low-income communities and people of color. The climate change community gets so distracted by nature that they rarely discuss the human lives that are being lost. However, communities of color have been fighting back for as long as corporate powers have been dropping toxins in their neighborhoods.
I don't want this stuff stored in my water. We're marching because we do not want this to affect our future.
But where did this all start in America? Here's a quick recap. In the early 1960s, Cesar Chavez organized farm workers to protest against their working conditions and the chemicals they were using.
It has to do with the children who are getting cancer, the farmers who are getting poisoned, our environment.
This actually led to the end of DDT as we know it. In the early 1970s, the Environmental Protection Agency was born. And guess what? It was started by a Republican. Yes, that's right. Richard Nixon started the agency to protect our environment.
Each of us all across this great land has a stake in maintaining and improving environmental quality. These are part of the birthright of every American.
Nowadays, Republicans have a slightly different tune about the EPA.
I would begin with the EPA because there is no other agency like the EPA. It should really be renamed the Job-Killing Organization of America. The Job-Killing Organization of America.
In the late 1970s, climate justice got national news when a small area in Niagara Falls protested against the toxins dumped under a community that was built on top of it. In the 1980s, the environmental justice community grew even bigger when leaders from around the country traveled to Warren County, North Carolina to protest the PCB landfill that was going there.
The State Highway Patrol began moving in on the marchers as they approached the entrance to the state landfill. The signs and chants of the protesters made clear their opposition to having the toxic chemical buried in their county.
Hundreds were arrested during this protest and received national television exposure. Warren County marked a real turning point for the movement, and people slowly started to wake up to how low-income communities were being impacted.
We will not allow Warren County to become a dump site.
In the 1990s, President Clinton started the Office of Environmental Equity to focus on how our climate was impacting these communities. In 2009, Lisa Jackson was appointed to run the EPA under President Obama.
Mr. President-elect, thank you for your nomination to head the Environmental Protection Agency.
She was the first African-American chief of staff in the governor's office, and now she's tapped to become the first ever African-American to lead the Federal Environmental Protection Agency.
Mr. President, if confirmed, I pledge to lead the agency in support of your vision and in cooperation with the immensely talented team you have formed here to answer our country's call and to protect our country's environment.
She aggressively works in low-income areas to help solve the rapidly changing climate. And that brings us to today. Although the groundwork has been laid by those who came before us, the issue of climate justice within the climate change conversation still needs a bigger push. So what are we supposed to do?
Remember back to a time when our energy companies were our friends?
You gotta see that. You gotta see the film for that. This is when it gets good. This is when it gets good. So this is the. It's going to be an amazing film, and I think it's going to shed a lot of light, and hopefully the goal, and when it gets into a lot of the artists, you'll see them involved, but it really tells a story that you're doing now. So I really wanted to finish up with this component about where we are today, and where we are as a movement. First, one of the solutions has been put forth. This president has said, and is probably going to say in a few hours from now, that no challenge poses a greater threat to future generations than climate change. No threat. The Hip Hop Caucus is also a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, in which we literally go forth and try to ensure that all lives, but particularly people of color lives, are respected and matter. This is important because of, for instance, the story of Eric Garner, who many of you saw was choked to death in New York City, particularly in Staten Island. And why that's important is because Eric Garner was a father. He had 6 children, and when he died, he had severe asthma. The other part of that story, when he says, "I can't breathe," is that even if he had not been choked to death, the other reality that Staten Island, which has the most trees in New York, by the way, received an F for air quality. And the other side of that story is that not only did he have asthma, but all of his children have asthma too. So not only would have been a situation that if Eric Garner had not died, then literally communities are being sentenced to death. So these coal-fired power plants, and you should know that most people of color, almost 70% of people of color, live within 30 miles of fossil fuel burning power plants. And so in this process that they're living next to them, they are, in essence, what you saw, being sentenced to death. So while these communities, and let me just also just say that our parents and grandmothers have been environmentalists for a very long time. I know, because I grew up in Louisiana, that my folks would put the plastic on the windows. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about, right? To our conserving bills, they still out, and then put the cloth by the door, the draft wouldn't get in. So they connected the dots that this energy process is connected to this. So in other words, this escaping is connected to my energy utility bill. But what they did not connect or did not understand was that because they were living close to these coal-fired power plants and there was no cap on these power plants. In other words, they could just release all the kind of pollution. They weren't regulated, which really what this whole fight is about being regulated or deregulated. But the reality, they couldn't regulate. That's no idea that while they were doing all these things to lower their bills and doing things that when they did not know at the same time that the pollution was causing many of them to become sick. And so now the carbon plant rule, or the carbon rule, which was put forth in the president's, really with EPA, this past summer in December 4. In 2013, it was put forth legislation with all new power plants to cap or to control the pollution or the carbon from these power plants. And then in 2014 would be the new power plants. This is called the carbon pollution or the carbon rule. Why is this important? Because it is actually in those emissions and those greenhouse gases which also not only causes pollution, but it also is responsible for climate change. So what this White House understands is this: we can fight pollution and poverty at the same time. We can address the issue for this current generation who is getting sick, particularly people of color who live close to these power plants, by regulating and finding out what we need to do to cap that. But also we can fight for the next generation who will have to deal with Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy, heat waves, and other disasters connected with climate change. But there's a push, as you saw, against that. It's amazing that Richard Nixon was the one who helped create the EPA. Now, this is not about Republican because you hear me, I'm not about bashing Democrat or Republican, because this is truly not about Democrat or Republican. This is about humanity. So my argument here is not about any political party. It's simply about how do we fix this, and the carbon rule does that. So now you in D.C. will have a much, not as high a lift, but you will have to go forth and fight firmly for the carbon rule. And I think, I'm not totally sure, I think that D.C. might be connected to a location. Yeah, I think it's a location. So where it works for the carbon rule is that it goes to the states, kind of how the healthcare process was. It goes to the states, and then within certain states, there are other aspects where it's connected together. So states can connect together, and then they can all check their emissions output. So I'm not sure if DC by itself might be connected to Maryland. and Virginia, which might be a tough road for you coming to Virginia. But yeah, to work that one out. But regardless of that, this summer, 3 rules will come forth. And we have to be prepared to fight for them. Now, why is this important as I close? I'll give you 2 reasons. One's personal and one's political. Political first. 1979, President Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. It was a great moment because people were, if you're old enough, I'm not quite old enough, but if you're old enough, you remember, I can see the footage, there was long lines at gas stations. So you remember those days? Yes, resounding yes. I'm still in those lines 40 years later. So those were the lines that we had. So Jimmy Carter wanted to take us off of that process, began to push forth this new clean energy. 1979 put solar panels on the White House. Ronald Reagan came into office, and I don't think it was maybe day 1 or 2 when the solar panels came down off the White House. I mean, he right here, I don't even ask what they have day. Get those things off the White House. And then now at Unity College, those same solar panels went to Unity College. Well, President Obama is now in the White House, and he said, guess what we're going to have on the White House? Solar panels. Which means in 2 years, either they stay up there or get some solar panels. Put your bid in. That's the political part. That policy is important. Demonstration without legislation leads to frustration. And so we have to make sure we connect the dots. Not for the personal story. When I left UDC, went to seminary, my work was involved in a little part of this city called Southeast Washington, D.C. Anybody know Southeast? All right. On Martin Luther King Avenue? The big chair in the house? All right, I'm my folk then. That's where I went to do my ministry. Most definitely. Definitely. So those are my stomping grounds. So I would be all around as a young minister in Southeast. At that time too, it was a lot of issues with young and some gun violence. So I was right there. The other thing that people didn't know is that there was also an issue that if you ever caught the bus on Martin Luther King Avenue or Benning Road in the morning, watch the children going to school, you would see a phenom. You would see all these little children going to school on the bus, and almost all of them would pull out inhalers. Anybody know what I'm talking about? If you haven't done it, check it out. Catch the bus at between 8 and 9 over in Ward 8 or Ward 7. And you will see all these little children who would almost, before they go to school, pull out inhalers. All of them, almost, inhaling. And so one of the things there is that you would see that. So for me, I had to do the ministry, and I quickly connected the dots between pollution and the effects of asthma. So I tell you this story for this reason. I had to do a funeral for a little girl. Her mother had a number of children. I'm not sure, it was like 7 or 8. But this little girl was like the child over in Southeast who was like that girl who was taking care of all the other children. You know what I'm talking about? That's that one. The one who would have been, she's the one. She's taking care, she's the responsible, like she's mature to her age. You know that child I'm talking about? Who's taking care, mama can still work, brother's acting crazy, sister's acting crazy. She's the one who's cook and clean, do all that stuff. But she had asthma. And so her mother had to play Russian roulette between, do I get health care and get a child her inhaler, or can she make it another week? She did it one time, tried asthma attack, couldn't breathe, made it to the inhaler, made it in time. Mother said, "Whew, okay. You all right, baby?" "I'm all right." And back to little girl picking kids up from school, going out there around, ducking, doing what she got to do in the Southeast to get where she has to get to. Mama can't afford choosing. But the real choice was already made for her because of the pollutions in the air. You see, it's not a choice between a utility bill when those choices are already being made for you. And so this time, she has an asthma attack, and this child can't breathe. And this time, that child doesn't make it across the room to the inhaler. And the mother finds this child dead in the living room. And then me to then come and do this funeral. While doing this funeral, the entire time I'm doing this funeral for this child who should not have died, because we should not have children dying because we can't fix the pollution in the air and our children have asthma and bronchitis. But because I'm doing this funeral for this child, her mother is trying to climb in the casket the entire time. Literally, the casket is almost falling over. And sisters and mamas and nephews and cousins trying to pull mama out the casket. And I'm sitting there trying to do this funeral while this mother trying to climb into this casket. This should not be. So I leave you that I'm sorry that there's some who want to make a lot of money and continue to push their pollution. And there's Capitol Hill who are pollution protectors. But because I can't bring that child back, I can't stop that mother from wanting to climb into that casket, but I can empower you and you empower others to stop the pollution that's running down in our communities. We can find a sensible and a clean process. We can do that. And if our bill ticks up to the whole tick up reality, but if it doesn't tick up, then so what? If these children can live and can breathe, that is our call today. That's our response today. Now I can't bring that child back, but we can unify as people of this fine city of the District of Columbia, and we can demand no child should have to deal with pollution. No child should live next to a power plant and be polluted. No child should have bronchitis because the feelings of others greed in their pockets. We can do that. And if we can't do it, then who? And not now, then when? So this conversation happening, use the Reverend and the pastor to create that discussion. Because we're here for a moment, we're here for a time. And we can't get the child back. We can do and fight for the next child. As we sit here in the unity room, know that when the people are united, they will be defeated. Thank you.
We told you you were in for a treat, but clearly this was more than a treat. He took us to the mountaintop, to the energy mountaintop. And I am a mother, and I'm not really very emotional, but this is really powerful, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Dr. Yearwood. This is a message that we all need to hear and to, to really embrace, because we are challenged by, the future. And what I want, the future that I want to give to my grandchildren is the future that Dr. Yearwood has described. So again, thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for participating. And I just want to share with you that Dr. Yearwood has come to us. He is scheduled to be on the Mall having a presentation, but President Obama is looking for him to come. But he came to us today to share his message with us. So again, thank you very, very much.